Luna 2 was simply incredible, and that's the reason why we've got a lot to talk about, so I'll skip the intro and dive straight into the video, but first. This is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. Well then, grab your favorite moon and let's get this video started. Rerir's story is actually very simple. He secretly worked as an assassin tasked with eliminating the descendants of the Crimson Moon dynasty, the dynasty that used to rule over Khaenri'ah until during the Archon War there was a coup and the Eclipse dynasty took its place. His job is also why he's called Rerir of Solnari, the one who seeks vengeance against Solnari, which is apparently the name of the iridescent moon and by extension the Crimson Moon. Rerir's story basically revolved around his love for Tholindis, his fiancée who, unbeknownst to him, was a descendant of the Crimson Moon, but also around Vedofurnir's prophecy of their future together. Well, how badly it would have ended if they stayed together, more specifically. Also important is the fact that Tholindis was researching the power of the Crimson Moon to figure out the secrets this dynasty left behind, which eventually led her to understand that the Crimson Moon's purpose was to connect the Vat to an unknown location, the Elysium we've heard about in Luna 1 most likely, but it would have required an absurd amount of Kuvaki to open said portal. At the same time, Rerir began hearing the voice of the Abyss in his head, disguised as Vedofurnir's voice, and it was slowly trying to manipulate him by showing that his job was not as normal as he thought it was, and that people, Tholindis in particular, wouldn't have accepted it so easily, which in all honesty was actually the truth. Rerir then began to see that Ermin's orders had become too radical and senseless, but he completely stopped believing in the Vinster King's ideals when Tholindis appeared among his targets, finally uncovering her secret identity since, as a distant relative of the main Crimson Moon bloodline, and with her own blood extremely diluted through generations, she had lost the characteristic X-shaped pupils. This made Rerir realize that the purge was wrong, so he began letting these descendants go, one of them being Frithur, a young girl who then decided to leave Khaenri'ah entirely, whom Tholindis also gave a piece of the Crimson Moon. Basically, Frithur is Arlecchino's ancestor, and that piece of the moon is the reason why she can wield its powers. By the way, two small digressions. Frithur left Khaenri'ah before the cataclysm happened, and being Arlecchino's ancestor means that she started a family and had kids, so Ronova's curse was laid only on those present in Khaenri'ah, not all Khaenri'ans across the whole world. The other digression is about Ermin's full name, Irminsul, but we can all see how weird that is considering it's the name of the tree that sustains the whole world. Anyway, right after, Vedofurnir warned Ermin that if he kept covering the Abyss, Khaenri'ah would have fallen, and for that he was blinded in both eyes, losing the ability to see the future, and thrown into prison. This is what finally set everything in motion. Dainsleif convinced Reindaughter, Surtalogi and Hroptatyr to storm the palace to allow Rerir to free Vedofurnir, but when Rerir rescued him, Vedofurnir suddenly saw a vision of the future. He told Rerir that the only way for his story with Tholindis to continue despite fate was for Rerir never to die, and then warned him that something was happening at the Universitas Magistrorum where Tholindis was working. There, Rerir saw that she had found a way to open the gateway to Elysium, and soon after she jumped in. That's when the Abyss convinced Rerir to absorb a part of the Abyss, thus becoming a sinner just like the other four, and with this power that prevents him from dying, he jumped into the gateway as well, to find and save Tholindis. Now, excluding Rerir, the Sinners were all drawn to the Abyss because of their grand ambitions, but the Abyss could only manipulate them because they all had lost something that prevented their goals from being achieved. Rerir, who on Nefer's chessboard looks like a wolf inside the moon, so the hunter that preys on the moon, lost Tholindis. Surtalogy, depicted as the claymore we saw him using in Skirk's story quest, pursued supreme strength, but he had lost an arm and a leg because of Hayden's corporal punishments. Vedalfurnir, who is interestingly depicted as a snake, since he basically tempted Rerir in the end, wished to foretell the future, but he had lost his eyes and with them the ability to see the future. Daughter, who was depicted as a unicorn, probably to signify her desire to create creatures that don't exist in reality, desire to create life, which makes me think that she couldn't have kids, so she dedicated her life to alchemy and Khaenri'ah. Proptatir instead is a mystery. He is the wise because he saw limitless knowledge. He was the president of the Universitas Magistrorum, the chief royal mage, and the most favored pillar of Khaenri'ah, so I think something might have happened to him when they stormed the palace, and he either lost part of his memories and knowledge or the ability to retain new information. I've always thought that he was Pierro, and Proptatir was depicted as a sort of shield with a Latin theater mask, just like Pierro's constellation is the crying one, but I was clearly wrong. Pierro was indeed a royal mage, but he never achieved the same knowledge as the sages, reason why Ermen never cared about his thoughts. And he is in his 50s, while Proptatir was the most important of the sages, favored by Ermen himself, and he obtained his senior post at his age because of his knowledge, which means that he was young, just like the Wings of Fate's course intertwined told us. I think the current theory that Pierro might be after Vite, the vice president of the Universitas Magistrorum who envied Proptatir's wisdom, might actually be right. When it comes to the Crimson Moon instead, it is the shattered iridescent moon that, to prolong her lifespan, merged with the Abyss. The ancient Khaenri'ahs didn't worship her, they just used her to make contact with the Abyss in order to find children from beyond Tevat who wielded powers that surpassed the gods. To control them, the Khaenri'ahs had them crawl through the same kind of fire Arlecchino uses into a fireplace until they admitted of having seen the Crimson Moon. The flames between two worlds basically burned them, leaving behind their after image, like Clairvy basically, which allowed them to bridge the gap between the two worlds of life and death, accessing the domain where the Crimson Moon actually is. This was a form of manipulation for which they somehow died and were reborn as part of this world. They were basically refined and forever marked. Thanks to Arlecchino, we also crossed between the two worlds, but before we arrived on the other side, we heard the Abyss granting us death and rebirth, until she realized that it was the Traveler, someone who wasn't supposed to be there because he had already crossed over from another world and had transcended fate itself, which means that she didn't have the right to do something she never said. I suppose this ritual only works on non-descenders, while an actual descender can't be touched at all. Anyway, once we entered the Crimson Moon reflection to reach the place where the Moon Marrow was, Solnari, the iridescent moon goddess, mistook Columbina for Canaan, the frost moon goddess, and recalled how Canaan suddenly met the two other moons because she was attempting to do something courageous. And despite Solnari saw the future, she lied to Canaan, so when her moon was torn into countless pieces and, as a consequence, herself as well, she merged with the Abyss to keep living. Then, before her definitive death, Solnari said farewell to Hypo. This is the beginning of a name, but it's unclear if it's Canaan's true name or if it's Columbina's. Hypo means under in Greek, so if you can find a decent name for it, let me know, since all that comes to my mind is hypostasis. Maybe hypothesis, but that's a bad name. To conclude, the Abyss then tried to keep us there because she didn't want to lose the Moon Marrow, which she defined as her heart. And that sounded just like Scaramouche all over again. But above all, considering how Nibelung reconstructed the moons, he might have given them the same functions as the original ones. So his iridescent moon construct also served as a passageway to Teyvat, only this time across the fake sky that the Heavenly Principles created. We know he fell in love with the Daughter of the Stars, which at this point could have been the Voyager, so he created this moon so that she could get inside Teyvat and meet him once again. Moving on, it's time to talk about Lumine, but I'll try to keep this short. I think that Erman tried to use the ritual from the Crimson Moon era, which basically snatched Lumine from the spaceship and brought her to Khaenri'ah. There, she went through the same induction ritual as the children of the past, but since the Khaenri'ahs didn't know how to perform it, Lumine did die and was reborn as part of the world thanks to the Abyss, but she also lost her memories in the process. Probably because those flames can also erase memories. When she regained them, she went looking for Ether all over Teyvat, but the spaceship hadn't crash-landed yet, so she never found him. Then, during the Cataclysm, Death showed her Ether's key, and in this case it doesn't matter whose key that actually was. Lumine still used her own key to pinpoint the location of the spaceship once again, but this time it showed the location in Nod-Krai, because by that time the spaceship had finally arrived. Of course, we will have to wait until Columbina's Archon Quest is over to finally understand what happened to the spaceship and who concealed it, and it probably has something to do with the Hexen Circle. To conclude the video, I'll mix the last few pieces of information we haven't talked about with my prediction for the ending of the Archon Quest. Rerir is, of course, not dead. He can't die thanks to the Abyss. He's already come back to life from the Gateway once, so he will do it again. What's interesting is that Varka went to Amsvarnir to fight the Wild Hunt thinking it was Rerir, but he was in the area we're exploring right now and he can't be in two places at once, so Varka thought that Rerir is probably working with someone who can also command the Wild Hunt. I don't think they're working together, but this other person is most likely Rotwang, a guy who defected to Khaenri'ah 500 years ago, where he got corrupted by the Abyss when he saw the pitch black Elysium beyond Teyvat. Initially I thought Rotwang and Rerir were the same person, but clearly I was wrong again, even just considering the fact that Rerir was born in Khaenri'ah. Rotwang was defeated by Ayla and Solovey, and he died in the bedeviled sky when he attempted to leave Teyvat, but Ayla also foretold that he would come back to life through the Abyss 500 years later, and that's what was happening in Amsvarnir. Also important is the fact that Ayla foretold that the hero who would have defeated Rotwang once and for all was someone Fate couldn't see, reason why she believed that it was the Traveler, but I don't think that she was right. As we learn with Nabu Malikata, the Abyss also can't be seen by Fate, reason why she knew something bad would have happened in Teyvat but she couldn't actually see the Cataclysm. What I'm trying to say is that the hero that will save Nod-Krai might end up being Rerir. Let me explain. Rerir's reason to acquire the Abyss isn't a never-ending desire, he just wanted to save Tholindis, so finding her means that he will stop causing trouble. I think we will have a sort of bad ending here, mainly because Nefer could see Tholindis' personal memories inside Rerir's memories, which might mean that they merge when they both cross the gateway. Remember, she went into the gateway before she was cursed by Renova, so she didn't have the curse of immortality, but her Crimson Moon blood might have somehow saved her. If she merged with Rerir, then Vedalfornir's words make perfect sense. As long as he's alive, their story won't end because she is now part of him. Realizing that he had already achieved this goal, he might become our ally against the true final boss of Columbina's Archon Quest, Rotwang, and after that we might even try to purify Rerir, but not in the usual way. If the Traveler absorbed the abyss inside Rerir, he would become just like his twin sister, so they wouldn't be the two sides of the same coin as they are now, and Rerir would probably disintegrate just like Arlecchino's hands would if he tried to purify them. Instead, we know that Kuvaki comes from the Light Realm, and it's the exact opposite of the Abyss. If one of the two powers is stronger than the other, the weaker is completely destroyed, so how can Rerir be purified? The solution sounds counterproductive, but this is exactly why it sounds extremely good. If the Traveler, Arlecchino and Columbina, as the representatives of the Three Moons, manage to blast Rerir with enough Kuvaki to balance out Rerir's Abyss, both powers would simply annihilate each other, purifying Rerir as a consequence. It's like Khaenri'ah in the desert, it mutually annihilates with the Abyss, releasing the monsters that had been trapped inside, which makes me think that Khaenri'ah is actually the Light Realm power Apep was supposed to wield, just like Xuquatl wielded Phlogiston, which can also annihilate the Abyss, by the way. Lastly, the mystery ally that didn't appear in Luna 2, except for noise from inside the tavern, might still be Ayla. She knew the future, so she could have set a shield over Hisi Island to protect it from Aino's cannon, and she worked with Solovei, the founder of the Lightkeepers, so she probably knew which books we needed in Luna 1. At this point, I think it's either Ayla herself, or she asked someone she knew that would have lived long enough to be present during these events, and in this case, the only one I could think of is a former angel we're about to meet, Nicole. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact theory videos, consider subscribing. Next, I think I'll make a short video about Sandrone's story, about Alain and Renee, and then one about the event in the second half of Luna 2. Well then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.